supernatural stories have been told on the island. These stories can make people and engines feel anxious. Once upon a time, there was a big engine who used to work on the railway before Gordon arrived. That engine story went like this. One night at Knapford Harbor, there was a steam engine preparing to take orphans back to the orphanage. His name was Franlkin. He was a big but kind engine with the number 45379. All orphans climbed on the coaches and the train was ready. "All steam to go," said the driver. "Okay," puffed Franlkin, and the train was off. Franlkin was making good time coming down the tracks with his train. But during the journey, it happened. Franlkin began to go faster and faster. "Slow down, or we're all dead," said Franklin's driver. But Franlkin didn't care. He just went on. After he came onto a siding, something happened. "I'll be taking you on a trip to the graveyard," said Franlkin as he came onto a bridge. Franlkin plunged off the bridge along with his coaches. The crash killed Franlkin, his crew, as well as his passengers. It also left no survivors. Later, after the investigation, the accident was ruled out as a simple train crash, with aging controls as the cause. After the ruling, investigators reported sightings of a ghost train coming by. No one knew it, but it was the ghost of Franlkin. One day, the engines were at the sheds, preparing for work. "I'm the best express this island has ever seen," said Gordon as he left. Gordon was waiting at Knapford. "This is the life," he puffed to himself. Deep down, he had his doubts about the night, and worried about his fellow engines. Percy had finished his work and was coming across his favorite bridge. "I should be back sometime soon," he said. But he was anxious. When he stopped, he heard evil laughter. He also saw steam hissing. And there Franklin's ghost stood in front of Percy. What are you doing here? Percy asked. I'm haunting your idiotic railway, puffed Franklin. He inched closer to Percy when another ghost engine was coming in. Franklin turned around. Who was that? He asked himself. It was Clinchfield 311's ghost. She had come in to protect Percy. Now, why would you want to scare poor Percy? He doesn't want to have nightmares, so please leave him alone, said 311. Franklin thought for a moment. Then he turned over to Percy. I'm letting you go, but next time I'm adding you as a victim next time we meet, puffed Franklin. Then he went away. That was a close call. Thank you, said Percy. No problem, said 311. Together, the two new friends puffed off. So you went to the train theater? Asked Percy. Why, of course, puffed 311. I went to see Mr. Peabody and Sherman there one night, and who was a super cool character? She puffed. No clue, said Percy. Penny Peterson, that's who, said 311. Well, puffed Percy, she was angry by way of a true answer. That resulted in a fight, said 311. Later, in ancient Egypt, she reformed, 311 added. Just like 87546 did, puffed Percy. Gillen worked hard all day, but he had his own doubts about encountering Franklin's ghost. Later, when he was returning home, Gillen had to stop for some workmen fixing the track ahead. You're a stickler to the rules, said the driver. This made Gillen happy. But he was worried when he heard laughter that sounded evil. He also heard steam hissing at him. Gillen's boiler turned cold when he saw one thing: the ghost of Franklin. Oh, no, said Gillen. Hello, Gillen, said Franklin. We finally meet, face to face, as if we were destined to. Everything I've heard about you is true, said Gillen, still in fear. If you do remember me, said Franklin, we're going to the underworld together. No, that won't happen, said Gillen. Why did you do what you did, taking the lives of the orphans on your train? He asked. Franklin closed his eyes, and there was silence. Gillen, said Franklin, the truth of my death will never be known by anyone. I know it, he continued. I was only a prototype for all Class 5s, he said. I was used on freight trains as well as passenger trains. I was one of the rebuilt siblings for Henry. 23 years later, I was thrown in a siding and retired, I puffed. But that was short-lived, and I was bought by the Sodor Orphans Trust a week later, I said. I was talking to one of the orphans when the master threatened to lock her in the cellar when they got back, I said. After that, I started to plot my revenge as I was leaving, I added. I didn't know at first that the leader and the orphans were on board, so I knew what I was going to do, I said. As I went down the line, I said, the driver put on the brakes. They didn't work, and I picked up speed. I did not want to listen to my driver, so I kept going. I puffed. As I got to the bridge, I let my pain take over me, I said. Then I fell to my death, I chuffed, taking all lives with me, including their leader, who tried to stop me from talking to them, puffed Franklin. So, that was it. This is why all that happened. You wanted revenge on the orphan leader for being strict with the orphans, said Gillen. In the end, you've got your revenge, but it costed you the lives of all on board, your crew, and yourself, said Gillen. The time has come for you to move on and find peace, he said. There was silence. No, said Franklin as his darkness took back control. Franklin, fight your darkness! Break free, said Gillen. No, I won't move on until I take you to the underworld with me, said Franklin. Gillen bravely whooshed steam in Franklin's ghostly face. What? Said Franklin. Then he saw Gillen was gone. No one denies me my plan, said Franklin. After Gillen reversed into his shed, he was haunted about how he failed to reason to Franklin. There had been a curfew in place due to sightings of Franklin's ghost. Engines like Omri were informed, and he realized that the curfew was for everyone's safety. Georgie was coming down the line after taking her nighttime freight train. Her anxiety from her encounters with Agatha's ghost clung to her. I should be home soon, she puffed, but then Georgie stopped. First, she heard evil laughter. Then, steam came hissing at her. After that, the ghost of Franklin came in. Do you feel anything? Pain, sadness, hatred? Said Franklin. No, you're a failure at understanding it. If you see Gillen, tell him his time on this railway is almost done, said Franklin. If you don't, you'll suffer your own demise by me, said Franklin evilly. Then he vanished into the night sky. As Georgie continued on, she found out that Franklin was worse than Agatha. The next day, Gillen came to see Gordon. We've got a ghost engine named Franklin lurking around, said Gillen. Oh no, said Gordon. That's awful. Me, Thomas, and Henry can put a stop to that, he added. I know you guys can, puffed Gillen as he left the sheds to do his work. "Attention," said Gordon seriously. Thomas and Henry then came to Gordon's attention. "Franklin's ghost is on our island, and Gillen told us about him," puffed Gordon. "Any ideas?" he asked. "Could we try to get rid of it in any way?" Thomas puffed. "Yes, we use dynamite," said Gordon. "Our time to strike will come," he confided. The crew of Thomas, Gordon, and Henry were having a nice picnic lunch. "What day is it?" asked Thomas's driver. Henry's fireman took out his iPhone 11 and turned it on. "My God!" he said in disbelief. "What is it?" asked Gordon's driver. "Today is the anniversary of Franklin's accident. That means he'll come tonight," said Thomas's fireman. "And we're prepared," said Gordon. That night, Gordon had ordered Thomas and Henry to split up in order to find Franklin's ghost. Thomas arrived at Knapford Harbor when he heard evil laughter. Then steam came hissing at Thomas. And then Franklin came. There were the green coaches, the same ones he pulled with him on the night of his fatal crash. Inside were the shadowy shapes of the orphans that Franklin took on that fateful day. "All steam to go," bellowed the driver. "Okay," chuffed Franklin. "Ha ha 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 ha," he cackled as he chuffed down the line. "Keep away from me," said Thomas. "No, I won't," puffed Franklin. "You can't escape me, because I always find you," Franklin continued. So the chase continued. They even crossed a viaduct. Thomas arrived at Knapford Station, where Henry was. "I think that I must have lost him," puffed Thomas, but he and Henry were wrong. They heard evil laughter in the distance. And some steam hissed at them. "Let's go," said Thomas. "Back at you," puffed Henry. "The last hours are closing in," said Franklin. Franklin was coming up behind the two engines. "I should have known what you're being idiots by doing what you're doing," he chuffed. "Stay away from us," puffed Henry. "Never, not when your days are numbered," replied Franklin. Thomas and Henry came into the yard where Percy and 311 had their conversation. I think we lost him this time, said Thomas, but that was proven false with evil laughter. Not this time, said Gordon as he was coming by. Both engines were on another bridge. Stop this now, said Franklin. Never. Stop this now, replied Franklin. Never, replied Gordon. His driver got out 2 sticks of dynamite. Then he threw them onto the bridge. Gordon, you fatty. How dare you do this? Growled Franklin as he came off the bridge with his coaches. Gordon also heard another explosion. It was from down below. That should be the last we see of that bozo, puffed Gordon as he reversed. Later the next day, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the 3 engines. The curfew has been lifted thanks to your bravery, he said. As a reward, all 3 of you deserve to triple head a rail enthusiast train. Thomas, Gordon, and Henry were excited. Thank you, sir, they said. Later, the enthusiasts boarded the train. This is a fun reward, puffed Henry. I agree, said Thomas. This is the best day ever. Last night was pretty cool, puffed Gordon. It sure was, added Thomas, and all 3 engines left after the conductor's whistle blew.